This is a program that we do in coordination with our local coalition, which is the Big Bend Coalition Against Human Trafficking. You see our information up here. I have been on the coalition since its inception and have been working in community here with lots of partners, including our U.S. Attorney's Office. And you see Kelly Doherty's contact information. Kelly is our lead with the U.S. Attorney's Office who organizes BBCAT, and to really encourage everybody here in the local Big Bend area. If you're not a member yet, please join us. Even if you can't make our quarterly meetings, we always have interesting information that's shared throughout the year. So please know that that BBCAT is there. And if you're outside of our area, take a moment. And if you're not already a member of your local task force or coalition, you can check that out. And you can find out probably by just calling the National Human Trafficking Hotline or looking online, and they'll let you know who your local anti-trafficking programs are. And I'm sure you can connect up. Okay, and this is who we are. I'm the executive director of STAC, which is the Survive and Thrive Advocacy Center. We're based here in Leon County, Florida, and but we work in the whole 6-county area that surrounds Leon. We do these things that you see on the slide. We work on issues of sex and labor trafficking for anyone who might be trafficked, whether that person is a foreign-born individual, U.S. citizen, male, female, somebody who has experienced or might be at risk for sex or labor trafficking. So we do all this, and we do that direct assistance and case management help with our wonderful community services advocate, Graciela Marquina, who I'm sure is on today. Hi, Graciela. And we also do that with the help of many in our community, because as you know, a trafficking victim could be a toddler or somebody who's an elder, and there's no way one agency could really provide for all the needs of a diverse potential victim population. So we do this with the help of many people in our community, always grateful for them. And that's what really makes this work meaningful and effective. Please, after this is over, check out our website, surviveandthriveadvocacy.org, and I'll share this information throughout. But what you'll know from that website is it's rich with information. We spend a lot of time cultivating and curating information from around the country. Also, let me just tell you this, because so many of you are from around the country. If you think something should be on our website, if you've just written an article, if you see something happening, if you want to write a blog, if you want to get information out on our event calendar, please contact us and let us know that, so we can include that and keep sharing information. The other thing that we do is we do education in the community for our business community and workplaces. So this is one of our latest efforts. It's called Stack Pro, which is an online, on-demand, free training that we highly encourage you all to take, no matter where you are. While it is funded by Leon County and Leon County Commission, it helps you understand how human trafficking comes to your workplace. And that could be whether you're in a bank, a nonprofit agency, whether you are in a convenience store, a hotel, any workplace. If you're a volunteer, if you go into these places, there's so much you can learn. And this is a very good training, if I do say so myself, but it is a comprehensive training that we highly recommend. And now I would like to introduce our terrific speakers today. And in the interest of full disclosure, I have to tell you, I've been working with these two women for decades, literally, for Vania for sure, and Daniela since you came to work with Vania. So let me tell you about these two experts that will be working with us today. I also wanted to take a moment, just an explanation of why we wanted to do this, besides the obvious that the immigration is a very important issue facing us and our world, and also faces many of our clients that we see at STAC and are in our community. And as such, just like we do with every one of these programs, we're not going to go into the details of what, the legal definition of human trafficking in all instances, or what we call human trafficking 101, but we're bringing you a kind of 201, if you will, something more specialized, something so you can build on the information that you've learned in the past that you may already know. So to go back to Stack Pro for a moment, if you want to know more, take Stack Pro if you're at a 101 level. If not, know that you're going to get a really great 201, 301 special topics focus every time you come to one of our Third Friday trainings. So first, let me introduce you to Vania. Vania is a program manager at the Center for the Advancement of Human Rights here in Tallahassee at Florida State University. She oversees the administrative work of the center, which she's done since 2001, which is shortly thereafter we got to start to work together, Vania. You conduct trainings on human trafficking for many groups in the community, oversee the center's case management and service provision for human trafficking victims and victims of other crimes. She's developed curricula for a bunch of different places, including the Florida Department of Education and DCF, and throughout a lot of other places on human trafficking. Relevant, very important to today, she was granted Bureau of Immigration Assistance, BIA accreditation in 2013, and is assisting clients with their Violence Against Women Act, DACA, adjustment of status, asylum, and I'm just going to leave all of the various immigration remedies. Vania, that's one of your slides, that you do it all as relevant to all of these immigrant populations. Vania's assisted over 300 refugees adjust their status to lawful permanent residence and helping them apply for citizenship. She works directly with a whole range of law enforcement and justice system officials closely to get the documentation and other immigration relief for clients who are victims of crime and to apply for victims comp. She's the co-chair of the Big Bend Coalition Against Our Baby Cat Survivor Support Committee, co-chairs that committee, and she also works with us at STAC, former board member, by the way, on the Social Justice Committee there. She has her bachelor's and master's degree in multilingual, multicultural education from Florida State. And in addition to the work at the center, she's taught for the adult and community education in Tallahassee from 2005 to 22, where she taught evening classes to English learners from all over the world. She's the lead teacher on online English classes there and is pursuing now a doctorate in learning design and performance technology. So Vania, I'm so happy you're here, and wow, you have so much great experience. It's really astounding. I'd also like to introduce Daniela Donoso, who is the Equal Justice Works Fellow, sponsored by Greenberg Traurig LLP and the Florida Bar Foundation, and is now working with Legal Services of North Florida. Daniela designed her fellowship to be a comprehensive immigration advocacy program in North Florida to serve immigrants who are low income or crime victims and establish immigration protocols, procedures, and resources for all of LSNF staff and community partners. Daniela, a past DACA recipient, knows what it's like to have your life shifted by fear and uncertainty because of the broken immigration system. Her personal and professional experience working with marginalized communities has instilled an altruistic spirit that makes her uniquely suited for the fellowship she's now in. Daniela received her law degree from FSU College of Law and became a Florida attorney in April 2021. It seems like just yesterday you were starting law school, Daniela. Daniela also got her bachelor's degree in international affairs from FSU and spent her undergrad and graduate time working for the center, gaining mentors and experience in immigration and trial advocacy.
Thank you, Robin, and thank you for that kind of introduction. It's always an honor to work with you. Robin has been a leader in this field. Daniela, it's always nice to work with you as well. And I'd also like to thank the Center for Child Welfare. I have taken some of the trainings myself, past trainings, and it's great to have that kind of support, that kind of community. With that, I know that this is a very crucial topic to discuss. There are a lot of misconceptions that are going on, and we'll like to address all of those misconceptions. As Robin said, we work very closely together. At the center, we have conducted different forums in which we bring task forces and coalitions that work in the anti-trafficking field. Throughout the years, we've done this in the past. We continue to do it. Currently, we just had a meeting back in May with different representatives from task forces and coalitions around the state that do work on anti-trafficking, the main purpose of that was to discuss best practices as far as making it a more victim-centered approach. So with our conversation today, our discussion, Daniela and I are going to try to focus exactly on that. What does it look like for victim-centered approach? I know that there is a lot of challenge talking about um, foreign victims of trafficking because there are, again, many myths, lots of misconceptions, people not necessarily being informed that for victims of human trafficking and victims of other crimes, that there are resources out there. So what we are going to discuss today, the discussion is going to be around who are foreign victims of human trafficking. We're going to be looking at the services available for victims of human trafficking from other countries who are here in the US. Um, Daniela is going to go over the immigration relief, and we are going to also talk about the collaboration effort and how it is important that we as a community, whole community, whether it's just Florida or collaborating also with other parts of the United States, how is it that we work together to help keep a victim-centered approach, even when we're working with foreign victims of human trafficking? As this is very key to making sure that all of those services are available to them.
So, and while we're jumping into this conversation, we do want to be mindful of language when we talk about foreign victims, whether when they're documented or undocumented. If someone who is undocumented, and we'll go into more of what that means, but just so you know that language is important when you're working with this population. We don't want to assume anything of any client. Everyone's story is unique and different, and you will never hear us use the word illegal. Okay, so again, very important the type of language that you use when working with this population, whether you're speaking directly with the client or if you're working with colleagues and other service providers. And so want to make clear from the start that when we are talking about foreign victims or survivors of human trafficking, they may be documented, which means that they have some form of legal status in the US, or they might be undocumented immigrants. So again, we cannot assume anything, and we'll jump into that. So, okay, what does that mean being undocumented, right? So when you don't have lawful status in the US, you might have either come into the country without any kind of authorization or inspection, or you might have come into the country with some type of visa, maybe a tourist visa, maybe a work visa, but you overstayed the time that you were authorized to stay in the US. So when that happens, then you're outside of legal status and now you're undocumented. So, and we'll talk about why living and being undocumented could be a huge risk factor to be susceptible to trafficking in the US. So when you're undocumented, that means that without legal status, you might not have access to a social security number, right? A driver's license, work authorization. So if you could just think about things that you have to put your social security number on, right? That's, leasing applications, even volunteering sometimes with your church. There's a whole host of things, right? Federal aid. So I think that's where the scary part comes up sometimes with working with this population is, okay, what do I do if this person doesn't have a social security number, and how do I move on? Is it actually a requirement for the services I'm seeking? And we can't assume, again, that if you're undocumented, you automatically don't have a social security number, or that if you have a social security number, you're not undocumented. So again, everyone's story is unique, and so important to talk with an immigration advocate to help with that. And so again, you can see different access issues that might come up if you are undocumented, to transportation, housing, bank loans, information, definite fear of law enforcement, right? And we'll talk a little more about that when having to cooperate for certain immigration relief. And then again, being at risk of victimization and discrimination by your employers, by your partners, fear of being deported. You know, if someone says, I'm going to report you to ICE, you better do X, Y, and Z. That's a very real threat for those who are undocumented and are here for different reasons. So are there undocumented immigrants in Tallahassee? Yes. Are they in Florida? Yes, right? So in Florida, I mean, agriculture, tourism, job, family reunification, fleeing violence. There's so many reasons why many immigrants come and settle down in Florida, in the US, right, in Tallahassee. So just know that, yes, I'm sure if you are working with trafficking survivors, I'm sure you will come into contact with a foreign victim who might be undocumented or documented.
What is an undocumented person um, able to receive? What kinds of services? There are, as Daniela has mentioned, documented and undocumented foreign nationals in the US who have been victims of human trafficking. There are lots of misconceptions too. A lot of people think of, as Daniela said, language is very important, of an undocumented person as using the word illegal. We totally discourage, as Daniela said, from using that. What does it mean for someone really to be illegal? When are you illegal? Uh, um, that is definitely, I think, a derogatory term. As service providers, again, we have to focus on a victim centered approach. Using terminology is a big component of it. A lot of people assume that undocumented immigrants here in the United States entered through the south border, that they didn't have a visa to come into the United States. In the immigration field, we use the word iwi, enter without inspection. This comes up again and again. And really, as Daniela described earlier, not everyone in the United States is here or arrived here through the southern border. There's a lot of misconception too about trafficking victims being crossed through the southern border. That is really not the case. We see again and again documented and undocumented victims of human trafficking who are foreign nationals. Um, Throughout the peak of the pandemic, especially, we did see a lot of H2A workers. So what does that exactly mean? Um, all of us know that during the pandemic, farm workers were deemed to be essential workers. There weren't enough workers within the US to really do these kinds of jobs. So the US government has a system in place in which people can get temporary workers visas. The H2As and H2Bs are those temporary visas. Basically, those visas are obtained so that people can fill the jobs that US citizens or people with lawful status in the US are not able to fill. Those jobs um, are normally the ones that many of these workers are here to do. And agriculture, the agricultural area, has for many years definitely been one of the areas in which we really have to depend on the programs to get our supply of our food, of our produce. Um, so many workers do come, or many foreign nationals do come through these visas. Um, we have also immigrants who have entered with tourist visas, and as Daniela said, they might have overstayed, so that they are also considered undocumented. We have also immigrants with fiancés visas that get here, and within a certain period of time, I believe it's a period of 90 days, they have to get married in order to continue their status. Well, why do we bring this up? We bring this up because people do experience vulnerability, and it is not just people coming through the border. I think that because what we hear in the media, a lot of people think that there is this huge problem and the media is trying to focus on, oh, we need to do something about the southern border because people are being trafficked. There is a big misconception between trafficking and smuggling. We are definitely seeing vulnerability in people who have a language barrier. There is definitely all of that in every component, but we want to make sure that everyone knows that victims of human trafficking can involve um, different kinds of aspects, and that people do come here undocumented, um, in documented and undocumented. They don't absolutely have to cross a border in order for them to be victims of human trafficking. I'll give you an example. We've had people who have crossed the border, they have gotten here. Initially, it was a smuggling situation. In the United States, it might have become a trafficking situation. We have had workers. I'm currently working with farm workers that got here with H-2A visas. They were promised a really amazing opportunity to come and work here temporarily. And once here, they found out, oh, this is not exactly what we were promised. And they were kept in very dangerous situations. We have also seen people that have arrived with a tourist visas, and once here, they ended up finding themselves in trafficking situations. We're going to discuss a little bit more about it during the immigration relief. And also we have scenarios to share with you so that we can break it down and see, okay, what is it that people face? Um, I've seen also, and I've had clients that have arrived with fiancés visas. I remember one particular client about a few years ago, got here, met someone online, and came with a fiance visa. She had the intention of forming a family with this US citizen, but once she got here, she was forced to provide sexual favors to his friends. So it became that trafficking situation once she got here. A lot of people may think, well, if they knew the kind of work that they were going to be doing here, then it is really not trafficking. That is not necessarily true. And we'll get in a little bit, we'll get into that and describe more of the cases that we have seen over the years.
Yeah.
We're going to continue this discussion so that you see that there are many different kinds of cases. There isn't like everything fits all.
And Vania, thank you for bringing up, that very distinct difference between trafficking and smuggling. And I did, want to bring up the terrible, terrible tragedy in San Antonio this summer, where 53 people were found in the back of a semi truck. 53 people died in Texas. And I know that Homeland Security called this the deadliest human smuggling incident in U.S. history. And we know that the accused smuggler was charged with a single count of transportation of these undocumented immigrants, resulting in death, and he could face the death penalty if he's convicted. So he wasn't charged with trafficking, right? He was charged with the transportation. But like Vania said, this could, if this could have turned into a trafficking situation as well. And it's so terrible, right? But talking about, those vulnerabilities that people have, and again, the reasons that they're coming to the US, whether you're fleeing violence, like the type of fear that you must have, right, to get inside of a truck with your children. I can't imagine that type of fear, right, or persecution, to come and try to find a better life. So just wanted to highlight that in the things that you were saying.
Thank you, Daniela. And you brought up a good point. When we when we look at human trafficking, we really need to see, okay, the vulnerability um, that people face and that traffickers exploit. If we look at what the kinds of different um, categories of undocumented foreign nationals and documented foreign nationals, the vulnerability that they face. In each one of the cases that we have seen with the various forms that people get here, we have seen that kind of vulnerability, exploring a better life, really protecting their families. So we would like to actually go with you and walk through a scenario. Daniela, how about I read the scenario and then we can explore together um, why is this trafficking? Is it not trafficking? Maybe everyone else can chime in the chat box. Let us know what you think. So let's read this. A recruiter came to Jean's hometown in Mexico, offering people temporary employment in agriculture for $12 per hour in the U.S. The recruiter told her that she needed to bring the deed to her house as collateral to make sure she complied with the work contract. Jean had to borrow money to pay the $4,000 recruiting fee, but she knew that once in the US, she would be able to pay it all back. Once she arrived in the US, her employer took her passport and visa. Jean and other workers were taken to a warehouse where there was no AC. There were only 3 showers for 70 people, and they did not have enough to eat. They were only getting paid $10 a day. They were not giving any tools to work and had to work with their bare hands. Jean's crew leader forced her to have sex with him. He told her that if she didn't, he would cancel her work contract and have her deported. There were guards with weapons at the entrance of the farm, so they were afraid to leave. Jean and many others were able to flee the camp one night when the guards got drunk and were not watching over the workers. So this is, this scenario has many different components. Now, remember when we were talking about people coming to the United States? Yes, we have many different people that have come here under this workers visa. A lot of people also think that only men come to work with this workers visas, and that's not the case. We see both women and men, and also women and men working in farms, and there is a lot of risk that they face, especially when they find a person who is exploiting them at many different levels. So let's talk about Jean's case, Daniela. What do you think? Do you think that, and everyone else too, please, is Jean a victim of human trafficking?
Definitely. And I think the audience is getting it right. They're putting in here, yes, labor trafficking, yes, victim of sex trafficking, labor trafficking, and yeah, forced fraud and coercion, right? We can see all three. Needing collateral, like putting your house as collateral up, that's a huge red flag, right? And paying some kind of recruiting fee that you're going to have to pay back, right? So you're already in debt to these recruiters once you get to the US. So that's huge way to coerce someone. And then there was so much fraud, right? There was like $12 an hour, and now you're getting paid, what was it, $10 a day?
$10 a day. Mm-hmm.
Terrible. And also taking the identities documents away, right? Having your passport just taken away from you. Like, how are you supposed to be able to move? Where are you supposed to go without knowing the laws of the US, without knowing, if your recruiter is legitimate or not, or if this is, human rights violation. And I think Jean and the other workers, had a good sense that this isn't okay. The way that we're sleeping and bathing and being, trafficked.
Yeah. And Daniela, I'd like to highlight that there were many cases of workers that were brought, especially during the peak time of the pandemic, to do this kind of work that found themselves in very, very um, hard situations again that they were exploited day after day. So Daniela, tell us, does Jean have any immigration status at this point? She ended up leaving the employer. Can you tell us more about that? What does it mean for her right now?
I mean, it depends, right? It depends on, did her work visa expire? And when also right now, and I know that's a huge conversation in the immigration advocacy world, is these work H2A, H2B visas, because when you leave an employer that you were working under, then your status is cut, right? Your status is taken away, which is terrible. It's a huge public policy issue for reasons like this. You know, if they tell you you have this visa only to work with this one employer, and if they exploit you, sorry, too bad, don't look for another job, right? So that's but now, you know, because Gene was, yeah, he might be undocumented now, but it looks like, or she might be undocumented now, but because she was a victim of trafficking, you know, we could pursue something called the trafficking visa, a T visa, to be able to get immigration relief.
And we'll get into that in just a few minutes. Daniela is going to talk about that. But Daniela is right. I mean, just the mere fact of having this particular visa tied to the employer, that if they leave that situation in which they are exploited, that they are considered undocumented at that point because their visa is no longer valid, since that visa was directly tied to the employer that hired them to work for that temporary time. So let's talk about the services. And Daniela, if you like, we can go through the services and then maybe we can come back to this question. How about in your area? But before we go on, have you seen this kind of situation as service providers? Everyone else, have you seen someone that has been exploited coming to the US with a temporary workers visa? Let's see if anybody answers in the
Yeah,
chat real quick. Yes,
yeah,
Jessica,
we're
thank
getting,
you. Yes,
yes, I
yes.
get
See, this is this
from
is
you,
something more common than we would like it to be. It's
right?
something that all of us have to advocate for. It's
Yeah,
something that is impacting whole communities. It's something that affects all of us.
yeah,
It is something that we might be contributing to. So being informed, for example, where our food comes from, but that's going to take our presentation in a different direction. So
yeah. But I
maybe a
like that
conversation for
services.
another.
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
I like that services question, Vania. And in the chat, you know, people did have good ideas of like alternative housing placement, which is a really huge issue right now, right? With rent over through the roof and not being eligible. And we'll talk about what you could be eligible for as a pre-certified
Yes.
victim with a certification, but housing is a huge one. And I like someone else put ESL. So some English language courses, you know, if they don't speak the language, that could be a huge barrier when
Absolutely.
working.
So I just before going into the services, there is a fact that I want to share with all of you that I found through the uh, human trafficking hotline, and it says that between 2015 and 2019 the trafficking hotline reported more than 36,000 survivors of trafficking who were legally working in the US. Approximately 87% of these individuals came here with the two kinds of visas that we are talking about, the H2As and H2Bs. And we'd like to highlight this to you because this is not what people signed up for. They ended up in this situation looking for a better opportunity, looking for a temporary opportunity even to come to the United States, and they end up finding themselves in this kind of situation. So those are really concerning numbers. Let's talk about services, though. A lot of people may have a challenge when it comes to providing services. As Daniela highlighted earlier, many people that we work with who are undocumented lack certain documents that are necessary to tap into some services, to access housing, to apply for different kinds of things, to apply for assistance. And there are programs out there, but not everyone is 100% informed that there are programs. There is this program called the Trafficking Victim Assistance Program. So on the very top, you see pre-certified victims of human trafficking. What exactly does that mean, pre-certified? This specifically applies to foreign nationals who are victims of human trafficking. For anyone who is a US citizen here, they're able to access housing, they're able to access different kinds of programs. Um, but for foreign victims of human trafficking, there are only limited options that we have. But the options are there. We just need to explore them. So that through this certified, pre-certified victim. So what exactly is that? Let's say that your organization come across someone who is a victim of human trafficking. Your organization has looked at everything, and definitely this person meets the definition of being a victim of human trafficking. There are different service providers all throughout the entire state that receive federal funding to provide assistance to foreign victims of human trafficking through what is called, for short, the TVAP program, Trafficking Victims Assistance Program. These funds are distributed throughout and is specifically for people that organizations come across initially. They may or may not be working with law enforcement. They haven't received any immigration relief. They may not have a social security card. Many of them, if they're, as in Jean's case, if her documents were taken away, may not have access to documentation. Um, so in this case, these programs are very helpful because they have level of funding that can assist with housing, with employment, maybe opportunities if possible. There is mental screenings that can be covered as well. Certain services to cover mental health, medical care, sometimes legal services, but I can tell you that there are many legal service providers also throughout the entire state that provide these services completely free of charge to the clients. So this is before they are able to actually access any kinds of services through any other agencies, because the only fundings that are available to them are through this TVAP, and it is again a federal funded program. This is not the only funding that it's out there to assist victims of human trafficking. Foreign victims of human trafficking can also be assisted through many local efforts. For example, in our case, we're very fortunate to um, be able to have Robin within a few, just dialing her number within a phone call, we can actually get some services for many of our clients because they have discretionary funding. Well, just as Robin is leading this effort here, there are many other organizations throughout the state that might be able to provide kind of the same services. I would highly encourage you to look at who are the task forces, the coalitions within your areas, to find out, well, if I cannot um, have certain services for my clients, how are people within those task forces and coalitions really coming and resolving these challenges? How are they facing these challenges? What kinds of services are they able to find? If there are criminal investigations as well through local law enforcement, there are ways that with, for example, a crime report, a police report, that they might be able to access other services through the victims compensation area within your state. I know that here in Florida, for some of my clients, before they are confirmed by the feds to be victims of human trafficking, we already know they are, and we are able to get certain services by submitting a victim's compensation application. Some of my clients have received medical care through that program, counseling services. They have been able to get different kinds of services if there is a criminal investigation. But again, really trying to find out what is there in my area. At the Center for the Advancement of Human Rights for over 10 years, we have try to keep a directory of service providers on our website, and you'll see that at the very end when we share resources. And at this point, we are in the process of updating it. It hasn't been updated in the past 2 years. Hopefully, by the end of this summer, we'll have it updated. But at least that's a starting point for you too, to look at other organizations, agencies within your geographical area that are assisting. So again, these are for pre-certified victims. Pre-certified means that a person came to an organization and the organization recognizes, yes, this is a victim of human trafficking. And yes, there is assistance out there. Let me see what is out there through the TVAP program. This link that you see right here is one that takes you directly into the contact information. And you'll see it in a couple of slides from now as well. There is an email that you can send to this particular agency, and they will tell you who the TVAP providers are within your area. Again, these services are funded by the federal government and are out there to help. Thank you, Daniela, for sharing that link on the chat. Now let's talk about certified victims of human trafficking. Exactly what does this mean, certified victims? Um, there is a process in which victims, once federal agencies acknowledge and decide that they are going to approve certain relief for the victims. I'll give you an example. Many times for foreign victims of human trafficking, we work with Homeland Security investigations so that they can investigate cases. If Homeland Security investigation has the discretion that while there is an ongoing investigation, that they can look at a case and say, yes, this person actually is a victim of human trafficking, but we need more information. We need to look at other parts of this case. To continue to move on, we need to gather a lot of more information. During this time, they have the discretion to request continued presence. What does that mean? That means that the person who has been identified as the victim will get a work permit. And that can be renewed on a yearly basis, but if the investigation is ongoing. With this particular I guess form of relief, you can call it, continued presence, they can obtain a certification letter. Well, let's say maybe that Daniela submitted a TVisa application for one of her clients, or I submitted a TVisa application for one of our clients, and they were granted. Or let's say that we submitted a TVisa application, we haven't gotten the final approval notice for that TVisa application. And Daniela will talk more about the TVisas. I don't want to take up a lot of time talking about it at this point. But we get a letter that says, yes, this person DHS recognizes that this person is a victim of human trafficking. Here is a letter kind of pre-qualifying the person. And eventually, when a T visa is processed and there is a T visa available, the person will actually get a final approval. Let's say that someone has one of these immigration reliefs already approved. There is a way that a person can request a certification letter. At this point, when a person requests, when a person receives immigration relief, they're no longer eligible for those other benefits that I mentioned to you through the TVAP program. They have to look into different kinds of funding that is available through OVC. But in order to have that funding, many times people or additional services, people need to request this certification letter. This certification letter can be requested either by the victim, um, by a service provider, by a state agency, by an attorney, caseworker, case manager. It can be submitted by anyone on behalf of the client. For certification letters are for adult victims of human trafficking. For victims who are minors, they have to request a letter of eligibility. With these letters, they are able to obtain other kinds of services, such as submitting a request through the Florida Access, for example, to obtain food stamps if they need them, um, and also Medicaid. So all of that is covered through the system after they have become certified and they're eligible to obtain these kinds of services. If anyone is familiar with this, and I am telling you the wrong time length of time, but last I checked a few days ago, it said that they are eligible for these kinds of services, of course, for a limited period of time. So 8 months is the time frame that they're eligible for this kinds of services with this certification letter. This certification letter, there's a whole system that if a service provider wants to register, you see the link right here at the bottom of the slide. Daniela, if you want to post it on the chat, that would be really helpful. This is the system that as a service provider you can register and you can submit the request right from there. Also, if for some reason case management is just something that it's really needed for your client, you can also request that through this particular link, and they will look at the geographical area that you're referring to and try to connect you with the right services, with the right organizations that are receiving funding through OVC to provide these services. This is something I want to highlight because a lot of people do not know. Through this certification letter, and once someone applies through Florida Access Florida, they are able to obtain other things as well. Well, with the certification letter, medical service employment through those local different agencies within your areas that provide training, resume building, and all of those services, housing. Some of my clients have been able to qualify for Section 8 housing. That does not mean that people having the certification letter are automatically going to receive housing. That's not how it works, but at least they can get on the waiting list. And I know you're going to tell me, wow, but that waiting list is so long. Yes, I do know it's really long, and they fall within everyone that it's requesting these kinds of services. The good thing also is that with this certification letter, people are able to submit an application for student financial aid, with many times is huge. Another misconception that we have is that victims of human trafficking are not educated. That's not necessarily the case. We have seen professionals who end up in really, really hard situations and being exploited and ended up being in trafficking situations. I just came across it, not my clients, but another service provider was sharing with me that they had doctors, two doctors from Cuba that ended up coming to the U.S. They were promised that they were going to be integrated into the system. What did they end up doing? Working at a chicken farm, and they were being exploited day in and day out, and didn't know anybody in the area, language barrier, in the middle of nowhere in the United States. So you see, it's really not only people that are not educated that come here as foreign nationals looking for better opportunities, but people from all walks of life. I want to point out this to you, and I wanted to single this particular slide out so that you have this information. These are very important numbers to keep right at your fingertips, because it provides you with a lot of information on what there is out there, to assist foreign victims of human trafficking in general, but it definitely highlights what you can do. That trafficking victim assistance program that I was referring to, that link is there. It takes you directly into who in Florida. There is an email actually that you can send an email to, and it's the same email for the entire United States. Then they are the ones that connect you with the different service providers within your geographical areas.
We're going to go through the second scenario of Pedro. So Pedro, born and living in South America, had an old friend contact him to ask if he wanted to start a company together in the US. He told Pedro to sell his business, house, and come to the US with a tourist visa. He said once he was here, he had connections to get Pedro a work permit and apply for a green card. And Pedro believed him. They were old friends. He and his family sold everything that came to the US. The next day after Pedro's arrival, his friend took him to work. Friend was making him work very long hours with very little pay and under hostile working conditions. They threatened to get him deported if he didn't comply with the working conditions. Pedro then realized that his friend's promises were not true and found himself not being able to go back to South America because he had no money or passport to return. And his friend constantly threatened him with deportation and verbally abused him at work. 4 months after his arrival, he was able to escape from the situation. So, Vania, tell me what you're thinking. You know, is Pedro a victim of trafficking? And how do you know what signs are there? And, you know, everyone in the chat, feel free to chime in as well.
And could I ask you a favor to just go back to the scenario for a sec in case we want to check some of those facts? Okay, great, thanks.
When a lot of times now, if you ask me as a service provider, I would start identifying different facts, right? And I would say, yes, Pedro is a victim of trafficking. A lot of people may say, well, Pedro came with a tourist visa, didn't he? Well, didn't he know that with a tourist visa he wasn't going to be able to work? And so a lot of people may think, well, if people know what they're going to come in the US, I mean, they got themselves in this situation. They did it voluntarily. So it doesn't look like they are victims of human trafficking. Now, right, there are many other components that we need to consider into cases, right? And let our clients take the lead. Again, victim-centered approach. Are we listening to what Pedro is telling us? He's telling us that, yes, he did come here voluntarily, but he's telling us that he was promised to get a green card here, that he was going to be able to get a green card. Now, Pedro didn't know what the process was to get a green card. He believed that this person that he's known, I guess, for a while. And so he decided, okay, yeah, it sounds like a great opportunity. We're going to be able to do something. I'm looking for a better life for my family. that was a lie. That was not it's something that he was promised that really didn't come true. It looks like he was threatened to be deported if he didn't comply with the request from the employer, that he had to work in a very difficult kind of employment situation, hostile working conditions. It doesn't tell us a lot, but really getting all of those details. So
Yeah.
is this
And I do want to clarify something I think might have been confusing. So when Vania was saying that, oh, well, Pedro should have known, what he was getting himself into, I think that's more of what she's saying. Someone who might be skeptical of why they're a trafficking victim if they knew. But I think it's more what she was just saying, that no, immigration is very complicated, even for practitioners like us. So for anyone to just come into the US and not know that, the green card application or process is that much more difficult than what someone told them that it would be, is not, I don't think is right to fault them for that.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. Thank you, Daniela, for clarifying that. So in this case, I would definitely think, or not think, I am sure that he is a victim of human trafficking based on all of those. Now, this audience is already experts at trafficking 101, and that's why we didn't go into trafficking 101. But if there is force, fraud, or coercion, it doesn't have to be all three components for us to say that trafficking is taking place. So I would say yes, he was threatened to be deported. Once he got here, he found out, oh, yeah, a tourist visa doesn't transfer into a green card. That's not what he initially believed. So I would definitely say that he is. And what is Pedro's immigration status? Well, just as Daniela was talking about the H-2As and H-2Bs, they're tied to the employer, but the visa for a tourist, with a tourist visa, someone is not able to work in the US. And once someone starts working, it's no longer valid. So he doesn't have immigration status. We're going to discuss immigration relief in just a little bit so that you actually have an idea of what is out there that your clients might be eligible to receive. Kinds of services, yes, there are kinds of services. We talked about the pre-certified, right, and post-certified victims. Those kinds of resources are out there, and it's just a matter of finding out, okay, where can I find them within my geographical area. Have any of you dealt with someone that has come here with a tourist visa that has ended up in a situation similar to Pedro, or to Pedro's situation? Yes, yes, yes. I see a lot of, okay.
Some
Well,
yes, some
yes,
not yet, but, or some no. Okay, a lot of no's and yes. So a mix, mostly no's, which is
yeah.
okay. We'll jump into, yeah.
Yeah. I
Or
do.
if you want to add something.
Yeah. Before we actually move on, I do want to point out, just want to share more than point out, um, because this is another situation. Just to make it very clear that just because someone knows what they're going to come to do, the kind of work that they're going to come and do in the US. Years ago, I had a client who was a victim of sex trafficking. In her home country, she did provide those kinds of services. Um, and she was recruited. She knew from the very beginning that that is what she was going to come to do in the US. Now, and that is what she was brought for. She knew all along. And so a lot of the claims were, oh, then she is not a victim of sex trafficking because that is what she did back in her home country. And that is what she's going to do here. Now, there is a very, very clear distinction in her case because in her home country, she decided how many clients, she decided when
Right.
to
She had
provide those
autonomy.
services.
She
She
still
was
had
in
autonomy of her.
control.
Yeah.
Exactly. Here, when she got here, the traffickers didn't let her go out by herself. The traffickers decided how many clients she was going to serve. The traffickers decided how much they were going to charge. The traffickers decided how much she had to pay for supplies. The traffickers decided how much they were going to give her. That she never had the choice to say, yes, I'm going to work today. No, I'm not going to work today. Whereas in her home country, she did. So I just wanted to highlight that be, to make it even more clear that even if someone knows the kind of work that they're going to be doing here, it's really that having no freedom of choice when they get to the US. So
Awesome.
Daniela, we've been
Let's
waiting for
talk.
immigration relief. Let's discuss this.
Let's do it. So as Robin mentioned, I'm an Equal Justice Works Fellow, and my project is focused only on immigration. And I was trained by the greatest, Vania. So we'll talk, and we won't go super in depth into what the requirements are for each of these for lack of time and capacity. But so starting with what they might be eligible for, right? So again, every single immigration case is different. Everyone is unique. Everyone's story is unique. And so, as Vania mentioned, for continued presence, for instance, if you are eligible for continued presence, there is a degree that you do have to work with law enforcement for that. Okay, continued presence can only be given by the federal government. So Department of Homeland Security or Homeland Security investigator would have to issue that continued presence. Okay, so there has to be some form of collaboration. And so if your client or survivor is not comfortable working with law enforcement, then maybe continued presence is not the right path for them. And that's okay. It does give them a work permit or access to a work permit and access to some of those federal services that Vania was mentioning. So, and it could be renewed for as long as an investigation is going on. So that's a big part as well. For continued presence, the actual agent that is interviewing your client to know whether they're eligible they have some kind of standard that the client has to meet of their own definition of trafficking or criminal investigation. And if it doesn't rise to that level, then they can say, no, we're not going to move on. Okay, so it's totally discretionary, just like almost all of immigration things, right? And so, but just so you know that it's an option, maybe your client, you've applied for a T visa and they're just in limbo, in pending mode, and they want to be able to work or have more access to services for their families. Maybe continued presence could be a good route so that, they can get a work permit quicker, again, while they're in that limbo. But once you have your T visa granted, there is really no reason to ask for continued presence because you will have that status and you will have access to your work authorization and those other federal services. So with the trafficking visa, so I know, and we're saying certification a lot, and I'll make a distinction between the trafficking visa and a U visa, which is also for victims of crime, those who are undocumented, of a crime that happened inside of the United States. Okay, so with a trafficking visa, you do have to show force, fraud, or coercion, right? But you do not need a certification from law enforcement saying that there's an open investigation or some kind of report. Now, with a U visa, you do need that. So one of the requirements, if you're a victim of a crime and you want to pursue a U visa, which right now is taking, I don't know, 5 to 6 years, right, to process, then you will need an agency that is investigating the case, which, for trafficking survivors would probably be law enforcement. I have seen, and we have had an attorney work with trafficking victims who were going through domestic violence also with their trafficker, and they lived with them and they were in a relationship with their trafficker, and so they went to go get a DV injunction. So getting a certification signed by a family court judge can also be done. So it doesn't only have to be a law enforcement agency, it could be a court that is investigating the case. So even like Department of I just blank of like agriculture could certify a letter saying that yes, there was trafficking in this instance, and that could be for a T visa, right? So again, T visas, it's not necessary, and if your survivor is not comfortable working with law enforcement or going to an interview or talking to them about their situation, they don't need to continue. And then really quickly, family reunification. Since we're down on time, we're not going to hit it so much, but just so you know that there are other options for family reunification for your survivor. If they're here already, if they have a T visa, it's a different type of process than if they're a pre-certified victim or if they have continued presence or U visa. So you can definitely reach out to us if you have questions about that, but we'll just continue now for lack of time. But just know immigration relief is out there. Talk to an immigration expert. Also wanted to hit just on victim rights,
Daniela,
regardless.
if you don't mind me just adding one little component, I'm sorry, Daniela, that for child victims of sex trafficking and victims of different kinds of crimes, Daniela was pointing out the U visa certification is definitely a requirement for the U visa, not really for the T visa. Department of Children and Families can also certify that form, that U visa certification form. Just wanted to point out, Department of Labor is the one that you were.
Labor, yes. Thank you. I think I said agriculture. Yes, Department of Labor. So, and then victim rights, regardless of immigration status, and you can see those on your screen, right? When you're inside of the United States, you do have certain rights alienable to you, doesn't matter, regardless of your status. There's victim compensation, restitution, orders of protection, right? Due process, and then other rights available upon request. Like let's say if you're in a criminal proceeding process, conferring with your prosecutor, providing a victim impact statement, getting different types of reports. So these are all important things for your survivor to know. And then now we're just going to, and we can go to the next slide, Vania. Just briefly go over, why is this important to know? Why is it important to know how your organization can help foreign national victims of human trafficking? And now we know that the majority of social services lack the capacity to serve this population. So all of those reasons, right? Maybe it's the lack of institutional memory. Maybe in your agency, you have one person that's supposed to work with foreign nationals, and if they leave, okay, now nobody else was trained in your agency. Where's that institutional memory of who do I contact, in this place, or being in a rural area? Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. With no close services, that's difficult. And then lack of access to updated information. I mean, immigration changes every day. Like, it's hard for me to keep up, and it's the only thing that I focus on. So we totally understand that. And then lack of internal policies or procedures. Like Vania was saying, there might just be the misconception that like, oh no, I don't think we can help. But maybe nobody has tried and said, why not? Why can't we? Is it lack of social security number? Does that matter? Look actually into your internal policies. Look at the things in the grants that you're getting services under. What are the actual rules in serving this population? And then, of course, language barrier and making sure that there is language barrier available.
But it definitely takes a whole community, an entire community to really provide services for victims of trafficking, not only foreign nationals, but victims of human trafficking in general. There are some added challenges to providing services to victims of human trafficking. Again, remember the pre and post certified sources of funding that we have.
Yeah, that's a great point, Vania. Thank you. So yeah, just like you said, it takes a village. working together as services, collaboration, communication, respecting each other's roles, and having a goal and purpose. And we can go to the next slide. And really just having some kind of multidisciplinary team support. So in your area, if you're like, you know what, I need to have regular meetings with my DCF representative, or my International Rescue Committee, their TVAP representative in my community. Having those conversations, asking more about case management, different mentoring and service providers as well. And then obviously, for sure, your legal service providers in your area. All of these things are so important because of so many barriers that a lot of our clients face when they are foreign nationals.
Evelyn says that there is need for more immigration training. Yes, Evelyn, I totally agree. There are certain organizations that provide sometimes free services. There are other organizations that provide reduced pricing. There is one called Clinic, all caps, Catholic Legal Immigration Network. There is an organization called Assista, CAST, Coalition to Abolish.
It's on the next page too, if you want to go to the next one.
Yes.
So this is our last slide.
Let's go on the resources then.
Right.
Lots of the resources that we have been talking to you about, lots of the different numbers are here on this particular slide. There is a referral directory that you can access. The human trafficking task forces and coalitions that I was mentioning to you through the Florida Attorney General is there. I recently sent a survey to all the people that attended our May meeting, and so they updated the point of contact information. The Florida Attorney General is in the process of updating that list, so there is that link for you. CAST, the one that we just mentioned, Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking, they're an amazing organization for legal service providers as well as case management organizations. They have a meeting on a weekly basis. Daniela and I just connected to the one that they had this week. Evelyn, for legal service providers, they do a lot of casework, not casework. Well, they do casework, but for legal, they discuss all the different components of, okay, what are the challenges that legal service providers are facing? How can we resolve this? And for us, because there are so many legal service providers that are experiencing the challenges, it's a way of brainstorming. Okay, how can we continue to provide the services? What is everyone experiencing? So that's a very good resource to look into.
I love someone in the chat, shout out to Samir, put that we desperately need training for personnel in law enforcement.
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
Another presentation, Samir, to go through, and how really they need to work in this space of services collaboration, right? And the issues that we're seeing. And again, because of time, we can't get into that. But yes, I totally agree. More training for.
Just one last thing that I like to, one last thing that I'd like to point out to you is that Shepherd program that I was talking about to request a certification letter. I would highly encourage you to go into that system and just to explore it, see if you are interested in registering, requesting services for your clients, you can go and register. You can submit a request for your clients, either certification or case management, if you need assistance. So that's another great resource to have. I know that an hour and a half is just flies by so quickly. We've been talking a million words a minute. Please let's have this discussion now, the next few minutes that we have. What kinds of questions do you have? Any additional resources that you use within your areas that would be beneficial for everyone else?
Hey, I think we have to thank Rachel, who said she attends these every month, and this one was the best one by far, she says, wishing it was 8 hours. Thank you, Rachel. That's high praise and well-deserved to to our speakers. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about it. And let me start with a question for you both. And both of our scenarios involved adults, but we know that very similar situations also happen to children and youth, right? You could have both older youth, say a 17-year-old who comes into this country and might be sex or labor trafficked. What do you see with regard to children? Because I know we've got a lot of child welfare professionals on this call.
Absolutely. So DCF has been on board, right, for quite some time now, and we do have human trafficking as a maltreatment code. And of course, I don't want to go into a lot of details because you're experts on this. So a child, once identified as a victim of human trafficking, again, they're um, they're able to work with different kinds of funding sources, right? Like the TVAP program. And again, children can also obtain a certification letter. They really need to have the right service providers to kind of work these cases. There are kind of different options for children too. How about if it's not a trafficking, if not a trafficking visa, a T visa, maybe there are other kinds of immigration reliefs that they are eligible for. I would highly recommend contacting an immigration attorney for foreign victims of human trafficking, especially minors, because they can be eligible for different kinds of relief that we didn't necessarily point out on this slide, but then again, they are, and there are certain provisions that they don't have to go through as adults to qualify for certain kinds of relief, including immigration relief. Daniela, do you want to add to that?
No, I think that's great, Vania.
And you might want to answer too, in light of other kinds of relief for youth, that we have a question from Kinsey saying, how long does it usually take for special immigrant juvenile status to get approved for children in foster care? And it looks like that she's been waiting a while to get applied back in April. Do you have any sense of that?
It's
I was just looking up the processing time. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
And I can put
Explain the two. Explain the different process, because it can take longer because of the two different processes, Daniela.
Right.
So if you can explain just briefly.
If they apply for their green card at the same time, then their application is going to go to.
Hey, move your microphone up a little, Daniela.
Oh, sorry.
There we go. Yeah.
So if there's special immigrant juvenile who applied for their adjustment of status or their green card at the same time, because their visa category number was current at the time that they applied for special immigrant juvenile status, then it'll go through a different processing time. But right now, I was just checking the I-360, which is the form for the special immigrant juvenile. And that goes to Vermont, right, Vania, or does it go to Nebraska?
No, it goes to Vermont.
SIJ. To Vermont. So in Vermont, right now it says estimated processing time is 6 months. So assuming you sent the application in April and you received, let's say, your initial receipt in June, let's say June 1st, right now it says the case is processing normally. Earliest you can submit questions is January 2023. So we know that these could take a while. And that's super frustrating, especially for the children that are in the system and you're like, they're going to age out. What do we do next? And we're seeing this as a huge issue in the panhandle. There's even schools that have been contacting us saying, hey, we have these kids, maybe they're not eligible for a status, or we don't know if they are. They're going to age out. What's our responsibility in educating them? Because many of them want to work. Many of them are turning 16, 17 and want to leave. Many of them have only education from the 3rd grade in their home country. How do we, serve these kids? So I can put the link there, and you can always check whether your processing time is normal or not.
Yeah, and everyone, what I also want to piggyback on what Daniela was talking about, if the visa category is available, there through the Department of State, there is something called a visa bulletin, and you can check depending on the country that the minor is from. You can see what category is the 4th employment category for SIJ cases. If, as Daniela said, that is current, everything can be submitted simultaneously. That SIJ petition and the immigration attorney can also submit I-485, which is the green card application, and a work permit too. The work permit normally is processed a lot faster, and with that work permit, the kids are eligible to get a social security card, which many times is so important to them in order to access certain benefits. But keep in mind that eligibility letter too, because even if the child hasn't gotten everything, let's say continued presence, even if the application for continued presence has been, or the petition for continued presence has been submitted, you can kind of submit that request and have it pending. They will ask you to submit proof that there is continued presence, and once you get the official notice, then you can upload it to expedite things.
You're getting lots of great comments. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, and I want to just echo mine, Daniela and Vania, for a very practical, hands-on, informative beginning, I'd say, to understanding a little bit more, a lot more about human trafficking and how it affects our immigrant populations here in Florida, where we have so many immigrants and enriching our communities.